welcome you. And for those of you who have been to our meetings, we certainly welcome you. I'd like to say hello to the TDLR staff, all of the board members that are here. Glad to see you. Okay, so we have a full agenda, so we're going to get started. Okay, Ms. Fletcher, Pamela, will you call the roll, please?
Ron Robinson.
Here.
Anthony Anderson.
Here.
Claudia Avalos. Natalie Enderman. Maricela Higgins. Barry Pascal Lindsay.
Here.
Alicia Rivera.
Here.
Vanessa Robbins. Diane Salazar. Lakeitha Sorrell.
Here.
Sorry, you do not have a quorum.
So we do not have a quorum to our meeting today. Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, the only impact of that is that you'll be able to move forward with the meeting, you just can't take any action. So you won't be able to approve the minutes, but the meeting can go forward and everything
so,
can take place. Okay?
So we will not be reading the minutes for the
That's
last
correct.
meeting, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. So we'll have to move forward with that. However, it is noted, is it not, that we don't have the quorum? so
Absolutely.
therefore
We'll put
we
that in
can't
the
do
next
this, okay? And anyone that was wanting to, for public comment, did everyone turn in a form that wanted to speak today?
We have a slew of them.
Oh.
Good.
That's a lot for in the country where I'm from.
I got it. Okay. So, let's go to item number C, training for the advisory board members. And I believe, Colleen, you will take care of that. Is that correct?
All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Colleen Tran. I'm the Assistant General Counsel for the Cosmetology program, and we're going to do advisory board training today. Just a little refresher on the Open Meetings Act, the Administrative Procedures Act, and the Public Information Act. So, the Open Meetings Act. The purpose of it is to ensure open and transparent government. So that means that we want to make sure that the public is aware of exactly what our board is doing and what we're considering. A meeting has to meet 3 main requirements, and the first one is notice. So TDLR and the board, we have to give written notice of the date, hour, place, and subject of the meeting that we're holding. That notice has to be posted for 7 days prior to this meeting, and we do that by providing that information to the Secretary of State's office, where they post it on the internet, and we must also post it online on our website as well. And we take the extra step. We also send out emails and give as much information and try to get everybody and keep everybody in the loop as much as possible. The second requirement is the quorum requirement, which we don't have. For the Cosmetology board, there are 10 members. We need 6 members to make a quorum. A quorum of the board must be present to take any official action. Again, this doesn't mean that we can't meet and we can't discuss things. It just means that we can't take any official action today, unless somebody shows up. The third requirement is discussion of formal action. So a governmental body, such as the advisory board, may only meet to discuss public business or public policy that they actually have is under their supervision or control, and they can take action on those matters. So only what's in your purview. Okay, so is a social function considered a meeting? So a quorum of governmental bodies is present at a social function, say a cocktail hour, that's unrelated to public business. That gathering is only subject to the Open Meetings Act if the members engage in a verbal exchange about business of the board, and then which they have control over. But it's not considered a meeting if that conversation is just incidental to the conversation that you're having or that gathering. This also can possibly be a concern when you're at conventions or conferences or workshops together. Just remember that you're not engaging in a meeting if your conversations are just incidental to why you're there and you're not taking any formal action. So some key points just to remember and just to reiterate: always be aware of your situation. that's occurring outside of when you're in this formal meeting to make sure that if your members are there, if there's a quorum. Don't engage in any substantive conversations about board business or the policy of the board when you're outside and there is a quorum present. And then there's this last thing that we'll go over, which is the walking quorum. What's a walking quorum? A walking quorum occurs when there's less than a quorum of the board that's present and discussing official business through any means, emails, phone calls, conversations out in the hallway. And then that quorum walks itself, meaning that each member goes out and talks to somebody else, and now you've created that conversation with the quorum of the members of the board. So it starts with less than the number of people required, and then you start talking to other board members, and now you've created a quorum discussing board business. So we want to definitely be aware of this and try to avoid it. Here's an example. So you have a 5-member advisory board. 2 members exchange phone calls and emails about possibly an upcoming rule and their research, and they each individually just talk about it together. And then one of those board members forwards that exchange to a 3rd member. Well, now you have a quorum of a 5-member board, and you're in violation of the Open Meetings Act, and you've walked it from a smaller group to one that's to a meeting that hasn't been properly noticed. So this is just something to be aware of and be careful, especially when you're in working groups and everything. When can it occur? Conference calls, video conferences, hallway discussions, emails, text messages. And what's to be extra careful about these days is the newer technologies that we have, Twitter, social media, Facebook. Those are all mediums that will count as you having a discussion of board business, that if you start to retweet things or whatever, that could create a violation. So to avoid the appearance of violating the act, you should try not to meet in small groups and discuss board business, and then communicate them to other members. Try not to send emails or text messages to a quorum of the board members. And even if you address them individually to each member, if you send 6 emails, you've hit a quorum of your members. And then try not to ask a quorum of your members, even on that individual basis, for feedback or comments. That's called polling, and it's basically taking an informal vote, and that's a violation of the act as well. So in a minute, we'll have the public comment period, which is an open session. So just we need to remember that our discussion as a board is limited to what is specifically on the agenda. But during that public comment period, members from the public can come up and speak on whatever topic it is that they wish to talk about. And it just needs to be remembered that they could bring up something that's not on our agenda, and it's not fair to somebody for us to discuss it if not everybody was on notice about it. So we need to stick to our agenda, but we're here to listen to them. And if it's something that the board wishes to take up at a later time, at the end of our agenda, we have a place for future agenda items that we can put those issues in that future agenda item for a future discussion, just to make sure that everybody's on notice about what we're going to discuss. So best practices, we try to specifically identify the items on the agenda. If you have things that you really want to discuss, communicate it to us here. The staff are ready, and we can make sure that it's properly noticed for the public. Limit the discussion to those items that are contained in the posting only. Avoid kind of letting discussions wander into new topics. I will try my best to kind of keep everybody closed into the agenda, and try not to respond. You can always ask for clarification during public comment. Anything beyond that gets into a discussion that we need to shut down and make sure that we put it onto the next agenda so that everybody is aware of the type of discussion that we're having. So what happens if we violate it? There are some civil remedies. Somebody can petition to stop the action that the board is trying to take, or if we've taken an action in violation of it, they can void that action. And there are also criminal penalties with a fine from $100 to $500 or jail time or both. And just best practices overall, avoid communications with a quorum of your board about official business. And during this meeting, try to confine the discussion about the items on the agenda only, and then anything that we would like to move forward, then make sure it's in our last agenda item to put on our next agenda for discussion. And that's my email if you need me, but I'm always around.
Okay. Any questions? Okay.
This is some additional information. This is in your handout too if you need it. The next one we'll cover is the Administrative Procedures Act. So the purpose of the Administrative Procedures Act, or the APA, is to establish minimum standards of uniform practice and procedures for state agencies and to provide for public participation and transparency during the rulemaking process. So a rule is simply a statement made by a state agency that implements, interprets, or prescribes law or policy, or describes the procedure or practice requirements for a state agency. We always must include amendments or repeals of prior rules if there are any, and it's not solely related to just the internal management or the organization of the agency. It's the whole program is what it can cover. So anybody in this very broad list can petition for an adoption of the rule. And it's known as initiating a rulemaking process. You're a resident, a business located in Texas, government subdivision like your board member, or just an organization that's a state agency but not located in Texas. This is the rulemaking process. It can start from an idea. Statute can tell us we need to do something. Draft rules. They're proposed in the Texas Register. They'll sit for 30 days for public comment. Those comments come back to GC. We review them. We make changes. We don't make changes. The advisory board reviews those comments and recommendations, are then sent to the commission. They go through them. If they adopt them, we'll file that with the Texas Register, and then 20 days later they'll become effective. There's also the other part of that is the rule review process, which is every 4 years. TLR goes through all of their rules, and it's set on a schedule so that we don't have to do all of them at the same time. But if it comes up for their 4-year rule review, it's basically a question is, do the rules still properly implement the statute? Is it still work? Is it still current? And it goes through a very similar process. 4-year schedule, intent to review, it sits for 30 days for public comment for people to say, yes, it needs to be changed, yes, it needs to stay, or yes, it needs to go away. We review, make recommendations, and they go back to the commission and the advisory board for adoption, just to basically continue the rules, to continue the program. This is basic information that you have also in your handout if you need it. But again, I'm also here if you have questions. And the last one is the Public Information Act. So this is, the policy of the state is that each person is entitled at all times to complete information about the affairs of the government and the official acts of public officials and employees. So with some exceptions. What that means is it makes all documents, records, and other information relating to official business open to the public, with a few exceptions we'll go over. Public information includes any electronic communication created, transmitted, received, or maintained on any device if it's in connection with your official board business. Any device if it's in connection with your official board business. And if you receive a public information request or something you believe is a public information request, forward it on to staff, because we have a timeline with which we have to respond. And so we have approximately 10 days to respond. Sometimes it's simple and it's information we can redact and just send out. Sometimes we need to go to the AG, ask for exceptions. So the sooner we have it, the better. Just remember, we can't ask anybody why they want the info. We can ask for clarifications, but the reason they want the info is none of our business. And these are some of the exceptions: date of birth, email, your social, personal health information, some educational documents that automatically we'll be able to redact for. So, and this is more info. It's also in your handout, but that's the end.
Okey-doke. Do y'all have any questions, comments? Okay. Thank you, Colleen. Okay, we're going to move to our next agenda item, which is we're going to, as you heard, our executive director state, we aren't going to be able, because of we don't have a quorum, to get an approval on the minutes of the meeting of the last meeting. So therefore, we're going to move on to public comment. We'll I did receive from Laura Hayes an email regarding some information that she wanted us to be aware of. So it is noted that we do have this email here, okay? Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on to public comment. If I mispronounce names, please forgive me. Okay, the first name I have here is Jan Exposito. So if you would come up to the podium, please. We need you to give us your name, your affiliation, and the reason you are addressing the board.
Jan Exposito School of Hair Design, Amarillo, Texas. My reason for addressing the board is about the lack of meetings. The lack of meetings.
Lack of meetings?
Yes.
Okay.
My question is, what is the purpose of an advisory board if they do not meet? I understand that this is an opportunity for licensees to not only be informed of what type of actions the staff is intending to take that affect us, but also to be able to give our input about these things that are coming down the pike. In the past 16 months, we've experienced a lot, from the possible drastic reduction in our hours from 1,500 to 1,000 hours, to changing the inspection procedures, to the requirement of licensed schools to now have their curriculums be approved. I would like to have been able to give some input about some of these things. I do understand the legislative process and that it is, you know, a situation where anyone can have a bill introduced, but I kind of like the opportunity to know where the board's position is about some of these issues that affect us so greatly. I have heard our executive director that does a very fine job. I commend you. I have heard that he has stated that the TDLR is wanting to work with the industry to face the needs of the industry for the future, and that they can only do this by getting input from the people they regulate. Mm-hmm. And so I would like to see some things changed in that respect. I think that we've had plenty of need for meetings with all these issues that have occurred in the past 16 months. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jan. Okay. The next person I have here is Kimberly Avery. Kim? Remember, we have 3 minutes to speak.
Mr. Chairman, it's interesting that you said that as Kim was coming up.
No comment.
Kim knows I have to give her a hard time.
Do you have my 3 papers? Do I have 3 minutes per paper?
I don't.
I have to, do I need to do all 3 right now? Okay. Just a couple concerns. I know we have been hearing about.
Can you state who you are and where you're from?
I'm sorry. Kimberly Avery, and I'm department chair over Navarre College of the Cosmetology program. And I know we have been hearing word of the pre-approved teaching plan that has been laid out, and I really personally haven't been giving that from TDLR, but I just kind of wanted to talk about or ask some questions or give y'all some question for thought of how this is going to affect schools that already have a pre-approved credit hour approval, and if we're going to have to do anything to change, or was that just a sample for some schools to follow? And if we are going to have to change something, you know, what is the timeline going to be? Because I know some of that pre-approved teaching plan is going to be in effect September 1. So that was my first concern that I wanted to bring up.
Another thing with addressing the the curriculum, I believe our curriculum has been so outdated, and talking to several colleagues that our industry has changed so much even in the last 10 years that we need to be on the forefront and get our curriculum changed, and we need to start now to get it ready for the next legislation. So whether we can get work groups to make that happen. You know, for example, we have 200 hours of permanent waving and we have 200 hours of coloring. And our students going out have to be more and more and more ready for this industry because there's more expected of them. And another concern with that curriculum, when they are a licensed operator, they have 50 hours of facial and 100 hours of nails, but they're licensed to be a nail tech, esthetician, or an operator. So I think there needs to be some cleanup. I don't know how old the curriculum is. I think somebody stated maybe 50 years. But if we could get a work group to maybe bring that up, and as we're looking at the teaching plans and just kind of all in one and make that happen a lot better. And this third one ties in to all the curriculum, of course. The credit hour schools, when we were able to operate in the beginning as course completion, where we're able to teach a course, like if you teach algebra at college, you go to school, you do the requirements, you have attendance policy, and at the end, if you miss 2 or 3 days and you do all the work, you still pass algebra. Well, especially coming from a community college, that's how we looked at credit hour or course completion, because every course is aligned with credit hours or seat time hours that the students stay in there. So I'm hoping that something will happen. I don't know exactly what you will tell us today, but I hope that the seat time and the focus
Yes.
will be clarified, and if we could get that on the agenda in the next
Okay. Thank you,
time.
Kim.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim.
Tim, thank you very much. And I believe some of the issues will be addressed during the staff report, so I don't want you to think we're not hearing them, okay?
Okay, there were 2 for Kim on there, okay.
Thank you.
I
Okay.
thought there were 3.
You're right, 3. All right. Okay, and the next person that will be Cheryl, is it Gray?
Right.
Cheryl Gray. How are you, Cheryl?
Good. How are you today?
Fine, thank you.
Okay, my name is Cheryl Gray, and I work at Splendora High School, and I represent cosmetology instructors of public schools. And I actually have 3 comments, and first one kind of follows hers, and that's that new law that says you can either do credit or clock. So I'm challenging the board to make sure that we have clear, concise rules that everybody can follow. That one school is not just doing one thing and then the clock schools are doing something else. And so that those rules do, and I know it's not about seat time anymore, or it can't be, but somehow that you follow that. So that if I have a student who is on clock and they move to a credit program, they're still equivalent. But if a credit program moves to a clock program, that works also. So I'm challenging the board to come up with certain rules that make it equivalent. And I do believe that's also written into that law. The other one is the new teaching plan. And I would like to know where that teaching plan comes from and how exactly is that to be implemented. There's a lot of questions on that teaching plan. If I have intro, and that teaching plan is done on like 65 hours a week, or weeks in the 2 years that they're in a public school. But if I start an intro student, does that teaching plan start in intro? And if my intro is not mandatory, and I have a junior student come in their first year, where do they start in the teaching plan in those weeks? So my challenge to you again is to look at that teaching plan and figure out how we're going to implement it. How is that the same for the public as it is for the post-secondary, as it is for a private? So there's 3 entities out there that need to be following pretty much the same so that these kids can transfer from one to the other. And the third comment would be on inspecting, and it almost follows the teaching plan. If one inspector in one area is saying one thing, then they all need to be following the same. You know, I personally have a great inspector, but I listen to everybody when they come to our meetings and they talk, and that, you know, we're hearing that we're still not on the same level. And so I challenge you to get us on the same level. All right? Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, the next person I have is that Elda Gonzalez?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Elda Gonzalez. And my concern was on the
Wait,
modules.
where are you from?
The Rio Grande Valley.
Okay.
And my concern was on the modules, that how long would it take? How long is it going to take to go back to the original? And if there's any input that maybe educators can be part of a small group to help maybe come up with something with the modules. Because I know that right now we're C-time. So Cheryl kind of covered everything. But we're available, you know, to get teachers that involved that are using the modules. So that was pretty much my concern, you know, to get educators that are using the modules involved. And that's it.
Thank you.
Okay, and my last one is Irma, is that Casco?
Bazan.
Bazan, okay,
Castro.
That is Castro, I'm
Mhm.
sorry. Sorry, Irma. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Irma Bazan. I teach in Mission Veterans Memorial High School in Mission, Texas, that's South Texas. And most of my comments have already been shared in regards to the credit versus hours. Just want to make sure that we get it right the first time. So if you get teachers that are familiar with the credit versus hours, or at least the modules, the credit, that would make it a lot easier. And we are willing to be part of it, or anybody that's actually experienced in that area. And again, just to keep us informed of when this can initiate, so that we can advise our school districts as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, do you have any more forms for me? Please, okay. All right, having said that, that concludes our portion on the public comment, okay? Now, we need to move to the next item. I guess that's staff reports. Okay, and I guess the first person we will hear is from our executive officer.
Mr. Chairman, how are you
Mr.
doing?
Brian Francis. I'm fine. I heard your comment about the meeting always starting on time with the previous.
I didn't know that you were going to remember the comment. I just thought I would say it and get away with it.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, I'm Brian Francis, Executive Director with TDLR. First of all, I'd like to commend you. I believe this is your first meeting as a chair.
It is.
And it's not an easy seat to fill, so we appreciate you stepping up and filling that role for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And in fact, I'm pretty sure that that's why this room was filled, just to see you as the chair, to make sure it went without a hitch. I'm thinking that's what it's going down, right? As you know, I've taken over as Executive Director on September 1st. Our Executive Director, Mr. Bill Koontz, retired on August 31st, and you know, Bill and I have worked together for some 27 years before that, so it was really tough to lose somebody that I'm so close with and a mentor. It was scary. It was exciting. Everybody, I mean, the first couple of days, like, oh, Brian, how's the job, and what is it like, and you know, it's like getting all the taxes. I mean, it's just, it was heavy, and it was intense, and there was a lot of stuff going on, and I'm very grateful that the staff was there to hold me up. We've got a great staff that works hard. They made the transition very easy for me, but literally it's heavy as the crown. I remember as I was talking in the last summer with my dad about, you know, the possibility of being executive director, and he's super proud and all that good stuff. And you know, he said, Brian Earl, because that's what he calls it, Brian Earl. Brian Earl, I know you think you've been running that agency all them years, but Bill Koontz run that agency. You were just giving suggestions, but Bill was making decisions, and there's a big difference. There's a big difference in going home every day and thinking about the salaries of your folks and thinking about whose spouse is ill, thinking about rule changes. Over the weekend, I have an opportunity every weekend to have headlines about a different program or maybe a licensee dying or something like that. So it's just a different focus. And again, I'm grateful that I've got an incredible staff that gives me a lot of support in this role. I'd like to introduce and talk about a few personnel changes, and then, Mr. Chairman, I'll go into an update on the legislative session, and then talk about the bill implementation timeline. So, you know, how do you fill the role? So I was able to find my new me, the deputy. Her name is Carla James. She's listening right now, probably with her feet kicked up on her desk, just listening in, but she is an incredible deputy executive director. She's smart, she's intelligent, she's tough, she's funny, pretty much everything I was not. And but she's been a great addition to the team, and I'm grateful to have her on board. She started December 15th. At that same time, I brought on board a chief of staff to kind of coordinate our customer service and our Office of Strategic Communication activities. His name is Nick Moenis, and I'll let Nick say a few things. He also started on December 15th.
Mr. Chairman and members, thank you for this opportunity. It's been a whirlwind 6 months. Carla and I started the same day, and I think we hit our 6-month period last week, and we look forward to a long and illustrious time together, and we've got a great staff. I've been so impressed with the folks that we have. They're very passionate and dedicated to what they do, and it's just great to be part of the team, and appreciate this opportunity. Thank you for entrusting us to help lead TDLR into the next few years.
Mr. Chairman, I'd also like to welcome on board, I think it's also Mary and Lakeitha. Is this your first meeting? So thank you guys. You're doing great. How you're sitting there is exactly how scripted it all. So you're doing a fantastic job in sitting down. Mr. Chairman, a couple of things. Tamla's going to hand out some information about the legislative session. I will start on some of the comments that were given during the public comment period. Jane is absolutely right that we haven't met enough. I'll just say that was that old guy, Bill Koontz, you know, or Jan, I'm sorry, Jan is right. But we're going to keep you guys busy for a while. As you know, after a legislative session, there's a lot of work that we have to do, and I'll talk about that work. We'll also touch a little bit on a better job that we can do in communicating and making sure that you guys are looped in. You're the experts, and we want to make sure that you understand very clearly that we are not trying to supplant or exchange TDLR for you guys. You're in the classrooms, and I'm talking to our schools and our instructors. You guys have done a fantastic job forever, and we're going to continue to count on you. So we will do a better job in making sure that we have you involved in the process and that we get information out to you as well. So this legislative session was huge. It was the busiest legislative session that we've ever had at TDLR, and that's a big statement. If you think about our agency and the huge responsibilities that we have, to think that this session we had more going on, more happening, saw a lot of these faces in the hallway. It was a busy session. To put it in context, we were in 65 committee hearings as one agency. We're in 20 different committee rooms for one agency, and that's a lot of work for us to do. There was something I wanted to do a little different than Bill did. I wanted to have a few more people involved in having the experience and sharing in the pain and sitting at a legislative hearing. So our team had about 15 or so folks that were there at those hearings for me. So I would do a certain number of hearings, whether it was a chairman's bill or sometimes our oversight committee. But we had folks like, Christina Kaiser and George Ferry and Michael Kelly. A lot of folks stepped up to help us fill that void. It's not easy testifying as an agency at a hearing. That may be the only time that committee member has an opportunity to talk to TDLR. So the bill could be about daffodils. But when you're sitting at the table, they can ask you about what size shoe did you wear in the 7th grade, and do you have bunions? And you're expected to know the answer. It's a very challenging process to talk about the whole history and scope of our agency anytime you sit in that chair. And I was so proud of the staff and the work they've done to prepare themselves and to represent the agency well, and they did. They did a great job. For every bill that's filed, the legislature will ask an agency and say, hey, how much is it going to cost to do that? Is it going to cost you more money? Do you need more people? Let's call it a cost estimate from each agency's perspective. Each bill then has what they call a fiscal note attached to it, saying that if this bill passes, the agency or agencies have estimated that it may take this much to do this job. Do we want to do it? And do we still want to do it based on the associated cost of that? We did more cost estimates this session than we've ever done. We did over 219 of those. We tracked 341 bills that impact our agency. You may recall that during the strategic planning session, we had a lot of discussions, and you guys are right there helping us out. You know, I just got to point out the schools. You guys are always front and center. You're not shy to tell us things that are going on, and so you've been very helpful in telling us what we do well, been even more helpful in telling us what we can do better. And if you're king or queen for a day, what's the one change you would make? And then over the next 5 years, what do you think is going to happen in your industry that's going to change the way that we have to do business? Well, we took that information and we rolled it into what we called our strategic initiatives. If you look at the whole legislative session, there was 6,631 bills that were filed and introduced in the whole session on the House and Senate side. About 1,208 or so of those passed. It's about an 19% pass rate. That's about standard. In previous sessions, you had 21%, 27%, 22%, but right around there. TDLR went to this session with 56 statutory initiatives. 52 of them passed. It's a 93% pass rate. And we could sit here and just pat ourselves on the back, even though I'm no longer flexible enough to reach back there, but we could do that, but it's because, thank you, Tim. It's because of the information you guys provide us during the strategic planning session. That's not a wasted effort. When you guys come there and you talk to us about the issues that are important to you, and we go back and we sift through it and figure out this makes sense, we could do this, oh, how about that? The legislature listens to that. And they know that we're not just pulling some idea off the top of our head, but that we've actually vetted the issue and we've gone through it and we talked to the folks in their districts and their constituency to say this is important. One of the most popular issues this session, and we heard it at every strategic planning session that we had, was figure out how to do the clock to credit hour and the credit to clock hour. I mean, it became a mantra. There was like 5 or 6 bills that had that in there. But that conversation doesn't happen if you guys aren't there, and guys being generic and gender-free, if you're not there at our strategic planning session saying this is important because there are kids caught in the lurch. We got to go back and reinvent some type of calendar and when they were sitting in the seat, but you told us we could have this policy about their attendance. Well, now we've got some guidance to move forward on that. I'd like to touch a little bit on some of the key strategic initiatives that we're moving forward, and then we'll talk about specific bills that impact the Cosmetology Commission. So one of the big thrusts that we had going into this session was to identify statutory licensing programs that TDLR no longer needed to regulate. Just get them off our plate. And those included vehicle protection product warranters. So if you're familiar with the club, you know, in your car, or VIN etching, vehicle etching, that's a vehicle protection product there. So we're like, you shouldn't have to have a state license to do that in Texas. Now you want to make sure that the contract provisions are in place for the consumers that are buying it, that they can do a refund or rescission and that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, you shouldn't have to come to TDLR to say you need to have a license for that. We took the same approach for the temporary common worker employers. That's the day laborers that are in cities. Groups like Pacesetter that do a great job of bringing people together and matching them with construction companies and that sort of thing. We felt like the state probably shouldn't have a license, but maybe it's better that the municipalities have a handle on that. And so that was a change that we went forward with the legislature. Legal service contracts, that's prepaid legal. So again, we're like, man, you know, it's about 10,900 of these folks, but there's only like 13 companies. You shouldn't have to have a state license to do that because probably over the last 10 years, we had maybe 5 complaints. Oh, so there wasn't a consumer protection harm or element that was associated with that element there. The same thing for booting regulation with about 13 companies, 94 booting operators throughout Texas. We felt like there's better use of TDLR's resources than to focus on that statewide licensing program. The reason is we got a lot on our plate. If we can free up some of these activities from our customer service division that doesn't have to answer all these different questions, we can be a little tighter, a little bit more focused, a little bit more efficient with the other programs that have a little volume. I don't know, like this little program called the Cosmetology program. You guys keep us busy, and we need to make sure that we're there to provide the support and the the focus that you guys need for that type of effort. So the example I used earlier today when we were talking to the barber group, you go into a session, you do all the legwork, and I need to introduce our government relations folks. Michael Kelly in the back. Michael, you stand up, please. Eric Beverly, I think he's back there. He left. He's fired. Okay, no. Okay, you're back on the payroll, Eric. You're okay. We had Colleen, and we had Mary Winston. Of course, Nick was coordinating all those efforts. That group right there works hard, and they work hard in the front end to make sure that we have all the statutory language and the amendments and all the documents, and they set up the meetings, make everything happen just right. And it's easy, kinda. It's easy at the very beginning of the session because every bill goes just like a train. You know, you got one train going this direction, another one going this direction, etc. So imagine you have 10 trains that start out the session, and they all want to go somewhere. They're not even trying to go to the same place. They just want to go somewhere. Well, when the session gets towards the end, there's like 2 trains left. Them other 7 people still want to go somewhere. And that's what you start seeing at the end of the session. People start getting on board and trying to attach themselves to different bills. We saw that with 2 of our bills, House Bill 4007, which deals with our health care programs, and then Senate Bill 2065, which dealt with what we thought was clearly deregulation. Well, that thing started just opening up, and there's a lot of pieces that jumped on. Some pieces that impact the Cosmetology Commission. I'd like to go into, or Cosmetology Board, I'd like to go into the bills that are specific to your industry. Senate Bill 1502 and 1503, they are not foreign to you guys. One deals with the threading issue. You may recall over the last, since 2008, we've been involved in a lawsuit over threading. Last June and I think August, the courts ruled against us. And so we had to pay, the state had to pay about some $800,000 for that lawsuit. We thought maybe it'd be a good idea not to have those lawsuits anymore. So threading is no longer being regulated under the scope of practice for cosmetology or barbering. The same thing holds true for the shampooing apprentice and specialty license. Some of y'all who are involved in the industry and you're over there at the Capitol all the time, you know that there was a theme this session, a very strong theme to deregulate a lot of stuff. There's a big theme and a big push on that. Apparently shampoo and specialty licenses has always been at the top of the flag for that for the last 5 or 10 years. When you look at some of the other bills that were introduced, that's probably something small to give away. There was a bill obviously introduced that would have changed the hours from 1,500 to 1,000. I saw a lot of you guys in those hearings. I heard a lot about the bills. It was intense. There was a lot of effort, energy, and intellect on both sides of that issue. And for some folks who didn't want it to happen, it had to be pretty scary. And for people who wanted it to happen, there was probably some celebration and then some scariness and disappointment at the end. That's called the legislative session, y'all. Stuff is introduced left and right. That was a big deal. It was a big deal, and I know it was going to, I think, change the stamp of this industry for a while. I haven't been around a long time, but I've been around long enough to know that you can probably anticipate some more of that. You probably can. We're going to keep plugging forward and doing what we do, try to be smart, try to be efficient and effective, but I don't think that'll be the last bite. And maybe the next time the bite is 1,400 hours, 1,350, 1,275.6. I don't know what the number's going to be, but it'll probably be a different bite. And that's something, for us to think about in 2019, but not to concern ourselves in 2017, because we got a little bit of work in front of us to do. House Bill 2738 and 2739, those bills are pretty straightforward. One was the ever popular, let's change the credit hours to clock hours. And then there was a 2304 that had that, and then it was in 2065. It's like everybody and their grandmother came out to file that bill. So we're gonna be working on that over the next couple of months. 2739 was talking about, that was a bill that we worked with. Again, you may recall the lawsuit a couple of years ago on hair braiding in schools. Well, that lawsuit hinged on a person wanting a specialty school, but having to meet the full school requirements of 2,500 square feet, et cetera. So we went through the strategic planning process and we're like, you know what? Let's allow a person to have a specialty school. If they just want to teach manicuring, no one has. They probably can't make any money out of it, but we said if that's what they want to do, and then I say let them in. So we're like, let's go forward with that. And that provision passed to remove the specific square footage and chair requirements for a specialty school. Remember when I was talking about them 10 trains leaving the tracks? Well, one of the folks that got on board at the last minute was a provision in 2065, and it takes away the square footage and the chairs for all schools. So you may recall about 3 sessions ago, we worked with the industry and we lowered the square footage from 2,000 to 1,000 if it's in a municipality with 50,000 or less. Well, there's no square footage requirement. On the barbering side, what we saw by changing that increment from 2,000 to 1,000 hours, we saw their number of schools go from 43 to 78. A member said, wow, if we take away the square footage requirements, maybe we can get that growth. We don't know. I think it's going to help in some rural areas. We'll have to see. This is going to be work, and we'll talk about this when we get to the agenda item, but this is going to be work that's going to be before the advisory board and the industry to help us figure out what that process looks like. But we clearly cannot have a rule or provision that says you got to have X amount of square footage, you got to have X amount of chairs. Can't do that. The requirements for schools have to be what I think they should always be focused on anyway. Do you have a quality instructor? Do you have a quality curriculum? Dare I say teaching plan? That's me just being silly, y'all. Do you have those elements in place? That makes you like, whoa, don't you play?
No.
Ray's, don't worry, Ray's gonna be at the cheer. I ain't gonna take it. You hire people like Ray to get beat up. No. So there's some work that's gonna be coming across on the school side, and I think the opportunity for us to look at other best practices. The Workforce Commission also approves courses. That's what they do. And there's no specific statutory requirements in their statute that says you gotta have X amount of square footage. They say, what does that school need to teach based on the number of students they're gonna have? I think the hardest part of the job really falls on Ray and his inspectors, but we'll go through that process as we get there. 2065, we talked about that with the air conditioning, shampoo, and shampoo specialty licenses. We also touched a little bit on the threading. The credit hours is in that one, as well as removing the school provisions. Here's one that's kind of under the radar, House Bill 2552. One of the big pushes during this session was trying to figure out how can we do more to bring about awareness to the horrible issue of modern day slavery called human trafficking. And there were a number of ideas and suggestions introduced to deal with that issue. In House Bill 2552, it has two requirements that we'll be working with the advisory board and the industry on. One requirement is saying, beginning on September 1, 2018, each continuing education class needs to include some information about how you report human trafficking, how do you identify it. It doesn't have to be some 30-hour course, just some information, and how do you report it. So So that has to be folded into continuing education courses. The other thing is, I think on February 1 of 2018, there's a requirement that every salon and licensing facility, which would be a school as well, has to have a poster up that says, hey, you seen human trafficking? Here's the number you reported to. And it has to be in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese. So those will be some efforts that we'll be working on as we go forward during this session. Let me check my list, Mr. Chairman. It's pretty good, pretty good. There's one other document I want to bring to your attention. This guy right here. Lakeith, am I doing all right? All right, okay. She said she was going to grade me, so I just wanted to like see where my grade was at in the middle of the course. So this one's called Who We Regulate. So remember in our dereg efforts, we wanted to clear our plate off a little bit, kind of get us some surface area that we can work with, because we anticipated that there may be some new programs. Mr. Chairman, do you have it in front of you?
Yes, I have.
Okay, I didn't know if you need to take your glasses
No.
off and hold it. Does somebody need to hold it there for you? I love you, Ron. I know
can
that's
tell.
inappropriate.
I need less love.
Is you That is so awesome. So we anticipated that there may be some new programs coming to TDLR. If you look at the list, those programs that are identified in green, transportation network companies, that's like Fasten, that's like Ride Austin, Uber and Lyft, those companies now fall under our regulation effective May 29th.
Wow.
So TDLR regulates transportation network companies. In that other column for medical and health professions, you'll see in green behavior analyst. Those are programs and providers who work closely with young folks who have autism, and the magic they work in bringing these kids out of that shell and allowing them to be communicative, it's phenomenal. During some of the hearings, they had young folks testifying as young as 6 and 7 who just 3 years before couldn't speak, couldn't say anything to their parents, and then to hear them being able to articulate because of the therapy and the work that the behavior analysts did with them is phenomenal. We'll be taking over that program effective September 1, 2018. And then on September 1, 2017, the podiatrist program will be moving to TDLR. That is our first medical program. We have a number of healthcare programs that have moved to us, but it's the first medical one. And that starts on September 1, 2017. We'll be working really hard this summer to make sure that we have the infrastructure in place, to make sure that we just don't drop the ball on September 1. And then we're going to build it and build the program, but we're going to make sure that we hit the ground running on September 1. The programs that are in the red, Mr. Chairman and board members, those are programs, you may recall last session, Senate Bill 202 transferred 13 health programs to TDLR. And we brought the first 7 of those programs on board last October. This is the next 6. These 6 are going to come on November 1, of 2017. And so we've already been working the last 14 months really trying to lay the tracks to make sure that that transition is even better than the first one. The transition for the first 7 has been phenomenal. We've gone out and talked to the groups. We've been able to look at the data, look at the improved services and the lowering costs. So really proud of that effort. TDLR on September 1 of 2018 will have a total of 38 programs, more than 760,000 licensees. When Bill and I took over back in 1999, eons ago, we had about 145,000 licensees and 149 employees. And so now we'll be at 760,000 licensees. We're at 426 employees, but then we'll have 471.2 employees on our staff. Technology has been our saving grace. I'll point out Jan again, she's right that the advisory board meetings are critical. And we're going to use these more to have the conversations, have the discussions about how the industry can help us and how we can help the industry moving forward. One of the things I will offer is that today when the meeting concludes, that Ray and his staff are going to stick around. If they don't answer your questions thoroughly in Ray's presentation, they'll stick around. You guys have traveled long and far. And so we'll stick around as long as we have to today to field your questions and really have an opportunity to talk. You're here. We're here, so let's hang out a little bit. It won't be a great party, but it'll be a nice one because we'll be there getting information. So, Mr. Chairman, I think that's all I have on bills. I'm ready to answer any questions you guys may have.
Do any of you have any comments or questions for our executive director? Sounds like it's going to be a busy time.
It is, it is.
Okay.
And again, on our later agenda item, I will talk about the timeline that we're looking
Okay.
at for bill implementation and the work that we'll be expecting from everyone in the room. Okay?
Okay. Thank
Thank
you
you.
very, very much.
Thank you.
Okay, our next staff report will be from our compliance division. Phoebe? Marinella?
Good afternoon, Advisory Board. My name is Elizabeth Bettis, and I will be giving the Compliance Division report. Since we last met, Marnella, David, and myself have attended the following trade shows. We have been lucky to get help from enforcement, education, and field operations and customer service, because this past year we had 2 shows on one day, so they were able to help us out. We also attend the PSI exam reviews, Marnella, David, and myself, and we've had quite a few. They're all listed here. We have one scheduled for July 10th through the 13th here in Austin. Marnella and I continue to assist enforcement, field ops, and customer service with questions that arise during investigations and inspections, as well as addressing daily industry inquiries and emails. And we continue to participate in the bar cause task force meetings that we have here in office. We have upcoming trade show, which will be TIVA, July 17th through the 20th in Irving.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
they lowered their standards, the staff did, and they're gonna allow me to go to that meeting with them, so I'm really excited about that.
We did? That completes my report. Any questions that I can answer for you?
Anybody? Okay, thank you, baby. Okay, the next staff report will be our Education and Examination Division. Oh, Lord.
Hang on a minute. Wait, I'm looking at something.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Ray Pizarro, Director for the Education Examination Division. With me is Lorraine Shroop. She's one of our staff members. Nice shirt.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you.
It's been a while since we've met. A lot of changes. As Brian said, since 2005, it's almost now 12 years we've been in this arranged marriage. And we've been moving along really good, and there's been a lot of change, and we are not the same agency as we were back then. So we've been making a lot of different improvements and efficiencies so that we continue to be that transparent type agency. We had an exam review update. Some of you are part of that board, and that was held on June 14th. And of course, we continue to look at the reference books and the questions to make sure that those items are indeed intact and they are acceptable questions to be on that exam. We also have Rebecca Arma. She's our education liaison. We've put her in that position since a year now. That position has been instrumental for all of us. Part of our strategic goals is to empower in schools, empower people to kind of understand and know what they need to do to maintain compliance. So she's been out there doing site visits, going to high schools, colleges, private schools, anyone who actually files that little form that we have on the website and requests a site visit. Some folks are not understanding the laws and the rules, or not understanding how to use SHEARS, which is our data information where schools will enter school hours, things like that. So she's able to give them that face-to-face time, and we're tracking her visits versus the inspections to see if after her visit and when an inspection happens, what is the percent rate of their violations going down. And so we're trying to see that trend that our our face and our presence is helping those schools. And that's what it's all about. We're trying to make sure that we educate the educators on what we do and what they need to do by the laws and rules. So with that, also on last September, we held a PSI rater training session. And what that is, we have raters who actually who are there at the practical examination site grading those tests. And every year we come together and we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. You know, what have we done right? What have we doing wrong? And as Brian was saying, you know, we do that with you guys, the industry, but we also hold our raters to those same expectations and say, hey guys, what are we doing wrong? What can we do right? What can we change? And that rater training helps us and helps PSI be better for performers when rating those exams. So that's very important to us. Our upcoming meeting, we are going to have another exam review July 10th through the 13th. Again, we're going through a lot of the banks. It's a big process. This exam is being administered, as you'll see in the stats, there's a lot of attempts going on. It's a huge industry and we have a lot of students enrolled. So we very frequently review these exams, unlike the water well driller exam and others, which is a low offering type of exam. We don't see those review comes up as much. And now to the big elephant in the room. Let's address what we're so calling the teaching plan. As I said earlier, we've been making changes and improvements, and this was one of our process improvement internally. We've been held by the legislature to start accounting for curriculum. That's a new performance measure that we need to abide by. When the cosmetology industry came over in 2005, we inherited the program as is. We took it on. As you all remember, we made some great improvements from the exam being delivered everywhere instead of coming to Austin, all those type of things. One thing we really never touched on, and 1602-453 clearly states that you have to have a curriculum approved by the commission before it's being offered. And we're like, whoa, really? And so we're like shocked with that. It's like, well, we didn't approve all of these schools that already been teaching. And when we look at the file, those existing schools, some of them have been teaching for 30 years, we don't have any course curriculum in the file. So there's nothing there. We never did anything about it. We said, well, let's move on. We got a lot more work, as you all know, since all that time we've been making a lot of changes. Well, as these performance measure criterias came along and changed, we're like, well, we better turn up the heat and we need to make some changes quickly internally so that we're not really posing any more stress or any more work onto the schools. This is really TDLR playing catch up. We need to get a copy of what you're doing in your school, understanding that, hey, I'm teaching eyelash, I'm teaching manicures, I'm teaching the operator program. The new schools, easy, because they're come new and we get them and we approve them. With that said, speaking of the new schools, when they were coming in, Lorraine and part of the other staff, they were taking anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks to approve a school because of what they're sending in. It's all over the place. We're not getting consistent type of information, and it will take a long time. And as I said, we're changing, more programs come along. We have to try to be more efficient. We want to be that transparent agency and not hold somebody, hey, I want a new school now that there's no square footage. Hey, I need a new school. There's a line. You're going to have to wait, 10 weeks. We didn't want that. So we're like, what can we change? What can we do to make the industry's lives a lot easier and easier to deal with? I know you guys have AT&T, and I hate calling AT&T because customer service line just takes forever. And I want results quickly. So I hear that, and we want the results quickly. And Lorraine and other staff, they're taking a long time approving those courses. So this teaching plan came into place. We're not changing the scope of the school. We're not changing the scope of their work. The intent of this of the plan was to, and we're going to continue to try to make some changes, especially after we speak to everybody here to understand where the confusion is, and so we'll wordsmith it. But the intent was, Alicia, tell me what you're doing at your school. Tell me about your lesson plan, because every school is different. There is not one school here that can tell me that they teach in the same way like every other school. Everyone has their own lesson plan. Everyone has their own weekly attendance. We don't want to know about that. We just want to know, are you teaching to 83-120? See, 83-120 is the technical requirements. Unfortunately, in my opinion, that's not a curriculum. A curriculum is usually, it's called a plan sequence of instruction. 83-120 is not a plan sequence of instruction. It's just the hours that are there that you have to abide by. So we're trying to, figure all this out. What can I see from Alicia?
I just have a comment. I don't mean to cut you off, but this is the thing. First of all, just let me commend you on what you've done and what your team continues to do, because we appreciate that. However, I feel like that if you had come to the advisory board prior to, we would not be having these issues, because we were never presented with anything. And that's where I'm at with this.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
And that is where I'm at with this, because this should have been presented to the advisory board prior to it ever being implemented or being carried out. There was a brief conversation at a meeting that I was in, and it was supposed to be on the website. It was never done. I mean, those are some issues.
Alicia, Mary Winston, we're going to let you
Okay.
beat Ray up.
Okay.
After the meeting, we're going to time down, and you're going to...
Okay.
No, really, after the meeting, he's staying, they're staying, whatever was done, we do apologize, or not done. But we want to try to get it right. So... you notice Brian left the room, so you got one, Ron.
Alicia, I appreciate that, and just know that the intent here was to change our process. We weren't trying to change anything of what you're doing in your school. So that was the intent, is to change TDLR's process. So the whole reason why we didn't come to the advisory board first, because we're changing our application and on how we approve things. But I hear you. I don't disagree with you. I appreciate that, and again, we'll stay here because I want to make sure that we all have an understanding of what we're trying to do, but we don't want to inconvenience the school on top of that. I just wanted to make sure that's.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and again, the only reason we didn't come was it was a process improvement change on our part, but I hear you.
Okay.
I forgot where I was. So I'll just leave it at this, that the intent of the plan, and maybe we don't call it a teaching plan. It really doesn't matter what we're trying to call it. I just don't want to inconvenience the school, but we need to know what you're doing in your school so we can put it on file. Hey, Alicia is doing the operator 1,000 hours. Great. Have a nice day. You're doing good. I have it on file. I don't want you to change anything or how you teach. The teaching plan wasn't meant to tell you what to do. It was to, unfortunately, for us to approve a curriculum, we have to know the hours per week. And I'm trying to get away from that, but I'm not too sure how to get away from that, because I really don't want to get into what you're doing in your school. You're the expert, not us. All we want to do is saying, Alicia's doing this, or, Mary, you're doing this, and you're not completing that 1,500-hour program in less than 9 months. We have to do that due diligence, that you are teaching cosmetology and not golf. So if we're just able to put that stamp of approval and remove a lot of those things, some of the things also we're changing is we don't want the school sending their refund policy to us anymore. There's a lot of different things we don't want them to send at the initial approval of a school. So we have a document of certification, almost like the students when they go after they take their exam, before they get their license, how many students we have. Can you imagine if everyone was sending in a copy of their high school diploma? We don't want that. So we are checking a box. I have it. You're checking a box. I have my curriculum. I have my refund policy. I have my course outline. Great. So when the inspectors come in, hey, Lisa, you said you had these things. You don't. So we're gonna check those on execution, makes the approval process initially go through a lot quicker. We're trying to expedite those approvals as we look at schools. The problem here is that since we're catching up, the existing schools, they're seeing it a different way, and I totally agree. Because, we're handing them a form. Hey, you need to fill this out. Fill what out? I'm a licensed school. What do I need to do this for? I get that. And so we're trying to figure out, okay, that's why we make a big splash, because it wasn't going to affect all the schools. Some schools already have a teaching plan. So on file with us, as we touch some of the high schools or private schools or colleges, we look at them, hey, do you have, guys, we don't have this at home. Look, we need this from you. If we made a splash, then other schools like, I already did that. I got approved 3 years ago and I sent all that in. So all the new schools are okay. It's those existing schools that have been in existence from a long time, we got to try to capture some of that information and put it in the file. And that's all that is a capturing of information. We're probably, Alicia, going to need to change some of the, yeah. And I get it, and we'll get there together. I was hoping I didn't want to inconvenience or put any burden on your school, but because believe me, you guys, and when they do the work group, we're going to have a lot of work to do with the credit hours. And Kim, I think you made a comment that there's an effective date. There is no effective date on this teaching plan. We're just trying to play catch up as we go. Should have been done 40 years ago, but we never did it. So as we touch the schools, hey, we need this information. Thank you. Have a nice day.
So the September date that we originally, that when we were in that meeting, that's
There's
null
no
and void.
September date.
Okay.
We're just trying to go by school by school. Now, another really efficient thing that we're trying to do, and Lorraine has a copy of it just to show you, once we get all these schools, we're going to start offering this certificate of approval. Why? Presently, we're having schools contact us and say, hey, I need, help me here, the letter of accreditation, because they're accredited by, and we have to write all these letters. It's getting to become a lot. You see what I mean? So what we've done, we've already approved this with the education department, the feds, and it's like, this is great. Schools can just send a copy of their certificate of approval. Hey, look, I've been approved to teach my course, all the curriculum that you're doing, you're done, and you have your certificate of approval. Some people were posting the entire rule on the wall. I've gone through, and they have pages of their lesson plan. And it's like, we don't need to do that. We need to change the way we do business. We'll update the rules. It says post the curriculum at 83. Post a certificate of approval. We already looked at your curriculum. You don't have to post that. So we're trying to make these subtle changes so it's easier on you. You don't have all this stuff on the wall, and it's easier to approve these schools, especially the new ones. As we get all these new folks, and I kind of foresee a lot of schools are going to be doing a lot of a change of location, because now that you don't have these square footage, some of them don't need all that square footage. It's like, I'm not going to keep releasing this place. I'm going to do a change of location. I'm going to submit the application. We need to streamline it. So that's where we're at. That was the intent of what we're trying to do. Did I leave anything
Yeah,
off?
you might just want to
You wanna
share.
go ahead?
We have been able to approve 94 schools with 188 different curriculum types in 2 months, to where before that would have taken approximately 6 months would probably be a good estimate, if not longer.
And that's due
So-
to this change.
Due to the new change, yes. These are all ones that used the new applications. So I think that exceeded our expectations, so just want to share that with you.
So Ray, can I say something?
Sure.
So are you telling us or speculating that schools that have been previously approved will go back and do this implementation to get this certification now? All schools will go back and reapply?
No.
Okay.
You're
To
not,
get this
you're
document,
not
you're gonna
changing.
post.
You're going to continue to teach as you teach. Think of it this way. All we're doing is some gathering of information is basically what we're saying. We're basically asking you, Mary, what are you teaching at your school? Is it eyelash extension? Is it operator? That's what we're
Those
doing.
programs.
Because what's going to end up happening, once we get all this information from all 500 schools and counting, the agency is going to be able to post on the website, here's our licensed school. In Austin, you can find schools that teach eyelash extension. Here they are. Right now, we don't have that information. Somebody calls us, how many schools teach eyelash extension? I don't know, because I don't have that information. So it's another resource to put us in line where we need to be of what the schools are doing out there, what they're teaching. Not how you teach, that's you guys. And so,
Right, and I just want to say this, is that, I feel like a lot of things got lost in translation,
Sure.
maybe, and, from this, let's move forward. But in saying that, as an advisory board, I just feel like we need to know what is going on at all times. I mean, that's our position here. That is what we need to know about. Whatever it may be, we need to
Sure.
know about
Sure.
that
And
from this
Alicia,
point
if
forward.
I want to just, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Ray, just say one more thing. It kind of goes hand in hand with the comment earlier about more meetings. And our executive director is saying, yes, we hear you, you are right. And out of everything that Ray is saying, and he's sweating a little bit up there,
Not enough for my liking.
he wants to keep
Ron,
it
he
up
slipped back in, get him. So the one thing I heard him say a couple of times, and it's true, process improvement. And when he says that, it's not y'all's process, it's our process. Because something wasn't gathered that we are frankly required to gather. So your process isn't changing. What you're doing is not going to change. But we have to gather, and we have to figure out how we're going to gather it, what we're going to do to fit this, to meet this standard that TDLR has to meet, not that you guys have to meet. And Ray is going to cool off after he finishes, and he'll be waiting to talk to you a little bit more, because this is his baby, and we're going to figure this out. But it's TDLR's
And I don't agree. I mean, I don't
process.
disagree with what's trying to take place here. I actually agree. I understand it. It's like I said, things have gotten lost along
Yes.
the way, and I just want, that's why I want you to know that, how I feel.
Okay.
So
And that is wonderful. As an advisory board member, that's what you're here for. So you're serving your profession well with all your questions, with making Ray sweat, with all of that. You're doing your job.
I have a question, Ray. So
Yes.
to be clear, when this is over, you're going to be available to give the process step by step what each school as a whole should do. 'Cause I think-
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Any questions you need answered, and that's what we're going to be here for. I'm actually going to start Lorraine to speak more of it, because she's doing all of the keystrokes. But yes, that's the whole intent. I want us to be. I was hoping, and obviously it didn't happen. I was hoping, as Mary was saying, we wanted to gather the information and be transparent and move on, and you guys would even notice a hiccup, but obviously that didn't happen.
Come on, this is cosmetology.
Well, I think too, we'll be able to, today I think we're going to have our work groups, we're going to have
Yes.
that to be assigned today, if I'm not mistaken, on the agenda.
And
I
let me
think
just,
that will be,
yes, that's correct, Mr. Chairman. And let me just state, because there were some comments about it, the credit hour and that process. We're going to need our education work group to come with the idea of how we're going to do this. We're there, because that technical requirement 83-120 hasn't been touched. Are we going to take, a lot of questions, are we going to take out the term shampooing? There's 100 hours of shampoo. Are we going to reallocate those hours somewhere else? Are we going to create a new related theory in there to
And I do
account?
have some ideas for that already.
Yeah. So we need you guys, and on top of that, do we need to create a different technical requirement for the credit hour side? Make that equivalent. Is 500 hours of haircutting equates to what? Is it 37.5 hours TEA? What are we going to do, and how we're going to do that mathematical equation so that when somebody, as some others mentioned, they want to hop from one school to another, credit to clock to credit, it's going to be seamless. Do we need to make changes in shears so you can enter the hours at a certain way? There's going to be a lot of different things that you guys we're going to need your help to make sure that happens correctly.
okay.
I think that's all we have, unless you have questions for me. And again, we'll be here, we'll stay here afterwards, but I hear you, Alicia, and we apologize if we caused any, if we rattled the cage too much or hit the beehive with the bat.
Ray,
That wasn't our
don't
intent.
let it happen again, Ray.
I do want to compliment you and
Yes.
your department, because first of all, I've had, my background has been the school industry, and
Sure.
I'm retired now. Perhaps that's why I was a little bit late this morning. I was in my retirement.
I didn't even notice that you were late.
I really wasn't, but they're making a big to-do, and I was in the back room having cookies.
Having cookies, I didn't get any of those cookies.
But seriously, I thank you so much.
Sure.
I know how hard your people work, and I know
And it's true.
how really and truly every time I have called upon y'all been very receptive and helpful, and I couldn't really ask for a better group of people to
Thanks.
work with. And I'm sure that will continue, and I do feel like with having our work groups and everything, we can iron all of this out
Sure.
to everyone's satisfaction. So do we have any more comments or any more questions on this issue? Well, we're tired of you. And so we're going to move on to another.
Thanks, guys.
We're going
Thank
to
you.
enforcement.
Mr. Chairman, we have
Something-
one more announcement under education.
Oh, that's
Oh,
right.
I'm sorry, excuse
Rebecca
me.
Armas.
Rebecca, excuse me.
So we're going to move over here. So again, I'm Ray Pizarro, Director for the Education Examination Division. As I told you all earlier, we've had Rebecca Armas in our group, and we've moved her to that liaison position, and she's been going out to schools, and I think a lot of you have seen her. Anybody have raised your hand if she's been at your school? Okay, great. So she's been gathering information, helping schools out. There are schools that are in need. They don't know what to do. They're scared to call. We don't want that. We want to be transparent. We want them to call us. They call Rebecca. She goes out. No, you're doing this wrong. Do this, so the inspector doesn't write it up on an inspection report. Oh, great. So in the meantime that she's doing that, not only for Cosmo schools, barber schools, driver education schools, and soon to be the massage therapy schools, she's doing this type of education, educating the educators to understand the requirements of TDLR. In doing that, she has taken a lot of notes. She has seen a lot of very neat things. Some schools have been even using Jenga to engage some of the students. She's come back and tell me some of these really innovative ways of doing things. Other schools have been having the students design the floor or do certain things at their school, way different than what you would normally think a cosmetology school would have. So with that said, today we're here to recognize one of those key things that had happened and I know she's excited. I won't steal her thunder, so she's going to go ahead and tell you all about it.
Thanks, Ray. Hello, everyone. I'm Rebecca Armas. I'm the Education Liaison with TDLR. I have seen so many faces out in the audience, so many familiar faces, and I want to personally thank each and every one of you for allowing me to come to your school, to visit with you, to sit down. Another thing that I wanted to mention was when I kind of popped in at the TIVA Winter Conference, and I noticed some collaboration, and I loved that, where all of the educators had a collaboration session on a Saturday morning to help their industry pass this written exam beast. And I thought that was a wonderful thing, so I'd like to, recognize them as well. But the thing that we want to recognize today, or the school that we'd like to recognize today, is Crockett High School here in Austin, Texas. Let's see, instructors Ida Villarreal and LeSabre Moore have instilled high standards in the students in their everyday instruction by promoting accountability and innovation. And some of the things that I noticed was they let their students run the school. They are in the background. They're saying, this is your program. You take the pride. You run your school. They just received some bond money to remodel the school. The students' input was involved. What would you like to see your clinical floor look like? And that's some pretty neat things, because you never think, it's just the administrator and the educator coming up with floor plans going, okay, this is what it is. But no, they took the time to ask their students, what's going to make your learning environment easier? What's going to make you want to come to class every day? And they've had a very good success rate. They've, in my eyes, risen, brought this program back out of the ashes as, because it's one of the, oldest programs here that they've, raised the standards where the day-to-day educators are contacting the cosmetology instructors if one of their students is acting up in class. And that's perfect, and I love that accountability. And so if I could please have Ms. Moore and Ms. Villarreal come up, we have a little token of our appreciation.
Speech, speech,
Yes.
speech.
Well, we're just so humbled and honored to even be here and just so excited. And, they say it takes a village, and we're just so thankful for TDLR's support. And we've been able to meet everyone from TDLR and have their support, starting with the inspector. And she's just been wonderful from day one in helping us progress, and also having the most wonderful co-teacher in the world that anyone could ask for. Also to our school, all the staff, administration, and the students, and the family, the support of our families, putting up with us from our day-to-day life. And so this is just really wonderful and such a great honor.
Just thank you for this opportunity. It's awesome. And it is hard work, but it's just a great blessing. And thank you to Ida for just always supporting us and just helping us grow. And we actually, just this past year, reached 100% of our graduation. So that's an awesome thing, too.
Thank you, guys.
Congratulations.
Gives me chills.
So that's all I have for the education examination report.
I love it.
Any more questions for us?
No, I believe if you're finished, we'll move on. Okay. Thank you, Bill Ray. Okay, I believe it's the next report will be from our compliance division.
No, we already did compliance.
Not compliance, excuse me, enforcement. I told you I couldn't see. Pardon me, it's enforcement.
Once again, I have to follow that, just as I did at the bar session, but it's a pleasure to do so. My name is Chris Funderburg. I'm one of the prosecutors with our enforcement division. I'll be presenting the report for you. Our report's divided into two sections. The first is a series of case summaries. The second is key statistics. I believe that the 2016 set of statistics is more provides a better snapshot of activities. Cosmetology is the largest of the programs that we regulate, and it shows in the statistics in front of you. You'll see that of the 3,000 cases, 11,000 cases open at TDLR, 25% were from cause. 45% of those resolved by agreed order from cause. But I should note that cosmetology has a better record of compliance than it appears any other of the programs that we regulate. Of the $1.5 million in penalties we assessed, we actually were able to recover $1 million of it. So speaks well to the licensee class. I think rather than just recite these statistics and summaries at you now, I'd like to take this opportunity to briefly explain what enforcement does, how we do it, and why. And I'll be using these case summaries for as examples. My hope is that by providing you with, and the cosmetology licensees that are watching and attending, with the purpose of our division, it'll help dispel a reputation that I fear precedes the enforcement division, and it's a reputation that's more intimidating than we need, and frankly, too often only complicates our mission. To begin, the department is charged with issuing, licensing, and regulating these licenses. These licenses are governed by statutes and rules. Violations of these statutes and rules are charged to the enforcement department to resolve. We hear about violations in two main ways. One is through our inspectors, who investigate shops and schools, shops on every 2 years, schools every year. These inspections are the bulk of the cases that we see. Then the second method is through investigations, which are a result of consumer complaints. When these complaints allege substantive violations, these tend to be the more severe violations: gross malpractice, death by infection, and massive unlicensed activities. But in any case, these cases end up at the desk of a prosecutor, and at that point, there's two main paths for resolution. The first is through dismissal. There are two types of dismissals. One is for lack of evidence. We look at the evidence. There's none there. We issue a letter to the respondent saying, you're free to go. The second is a dismissal by warning. This is where we have find violations. There's sufficient evidence to substantiate them. We could seek a penalty, but we decide not to because there's not, but either the warning, either the violation itself isn't sufficiently severe, or because there's sufficient evidence of remedial action that we don't need to take, that we don't need to seek a penalty. We send out a send no more letter, and that's the end of it. That said, if we get if we hear again from the same violation, you don't get a warning. You hear from us. Now, that is the I guess the quicker method that these cases are disposed by. The second method is where we assess the evidence supporting the violations and decide that we do need to seek a penalty. We send out a notice of alleged violations to the respondent, and then these cases are resolved by one of several methods. First, we don't hear from them. They just, this is frequently encountered with unlicensed activities. We've got a good address for them, but that's it. We never hear from them. We proceed on a default judgment basis. It's a paper judgment. Cannot collect on those, though we can send it to the AG's office to try and collect some money, or also to a collections agency. We can use those later on if they ever do try to become licensed, or if they just appear again to increase the penalty sought against them. You'll see that in the case highlights, the first of these cases against Nail Glamour. This is one of those cases where multiple sanitation violations were discovered, and we sought a penalty of $5,600 because this was the second round of equally disgusting sanitation violations. So that's a default. The second method of resolution is through what is our preferred method, an agreed order. An agreed order is essentially a settlement agreement between us and the respondent where they agree that the violations exist. We seek a reduced penalty. They enter into either a payment plan or just pay it in full, and that's that. I guess this is the important distinction I'd like to make between enforcement as prosecution and, say, criminal prosecutions. We don't have criminal powers. Our role isn't a punitive one. We don't seek to punish. We seek to bring licensees into compliance, excuse me. So the best method for us to do so is with these agreed orders because it ensures that the respondent knows that they've erred, but they've taken the steps to correct that error. And you'll see the bulk, I think all the remaining cases, yes, were resolved by settlement agreement, all the respondents in these instances. And that's how we want to do it because, again, punishment isn't our goal, but compliance is. Now, but if we can't get an agreed order, if they say, no, we don't, these allegations that you've made against us, they're allegations. Where's the evidence? Well, we take it to court. The administrative law judge at the State Office of Administrative Hearings issues a proposal for decision, either ruling in our favor or not. The board, the commission that oversees the department's activities either agrees with the administrative law judge or doesn't. That decision it can be appealed to the district court, though that's rare. So litigation agreed order or default judgment, those are how cases are resolved. I think what I wanted to just emphasize with these cases is that there's the scope of the violations that we address. You'll see that in the first case talks about several sanitation violations as were brought up in the settlement agreement against Michael LLC. You also see that there are several school cases that we've successfully negotiated a settlement on. One is regarding the students' calculation of a tuition refund. These are common cases. We don't always pursue these. However, if there's evidence of a systemic miscalculation against multiple students, we do. And you also see that the second of the two against Charles and Sue School of Hair Design, if there's a fat finger error in misreporting of clock hours, just something that looks like someone made a slight decimal increase or decrease, we tend to dismiss those with a warning once we've ensured that the error has been corrected. And this one is the second violation, so we didn't let it go. And you can see it led to a $2,700 penalty, which was paid in full. And I just mentioned the final case as fraud is one of the things we never let go, especially when you're cheating on an exam. $2,250 later, I think this respondent is actually seeking a license again, so I consider that a win. I realized that I was listening to myself at the bar advisory board meeting and realized I sounded like an auctioneer. I hope I haven't talked too fast. If you have any questions, please let me, I'll be happy to try and answer them.
I'm catching up.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Well, we had to make up time because of Ray. He took so much time.
Oh,
Do you have any comments or questions for our enforcement? Okay, thank you very much, Chris. Okay, I think the next thing we're going to move to is field operations. Is that correct? Hello, hello.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I am Tanya Guthrow. I'm the director of the Field Operations Division, and we are the division that performs the on-site inspections for the cosmetology salons. What I'd like to do is, on our report, we have one item I would like to take out of order and do at the very end, and that is the outreach item.
Okay.
And so to get started, we have our most commonly found violations. And I want to distinguish between, you know, enforcement may get violations and it may not be the same list. So these are violations that the inspectors may note. They may be very serious or not, but these are just all of the violations that are noted during the inspections. And this is for the second quarter of fiscal year 2017. Our next item is on new technology, and I have listed here mobile inspection. I want to point out that's not a mobile salon inspection. What we're talking about is inspections that we have been working on so that the inspectors can perform the inspection on site on a tablet, gather the information, and then have that information electronically transfer into our databases. It's going to streamline our processes and make everything go a lot quicker. We have so far completed our towing mobile inspection. So they're out there collecting the information, and IT should be finished creating the program that's going to move that data from the inspector's tablets into our databases by the end of the month. And eventually we're going to get to, as soon as we can, the cosmetology inspections as well. But we started with our towing, we'll probably do vehicle storage facilities next, and then we'll move on to the cosmetology and barber programs. Okay.
Sounds good.
Next we have an item, mini salon roundups. We have been going out there in order to save in our travel and our time. As you know, each one of those is a separate licensed entity, and they may or may not be there when we show up. And so it can be very costly for us to have to go out there over and over again to try to catch people there. So we've instituted a program like we do for our towing companies and tow trucks, where we say, we're going to come on this day, we want to get this done for you. And, you know, so far it's been very successful, and we've been able to get a lot of those inspections that need to be done completed. And we have had several changes in personnel since we last met with you guys. I want to mention Jorge Vega, who we've hired, and he's an inspector in San Antonio. And he's doing a great job. Also, we have hired Adriana Gonzalez as a facilitator. She works here in Austin to replace a position that Ray stole, one of my employees. And so anyway, she's been doing great too. We're very happy to have her. We also have a few open inspector positions, and we'll be waiting and hopefully able to hire them after the first of the year, or first of the fiscal year. And our statistics is the last item. And you can see that we're doing good for this year, and we've had a very productive year. If you guys don't have any questions on those items, I want to go ahead and move on to our outreach. For outreach, I want to introduce our South Region Manager, Jennifer Harless. She has been working with Cherise Hobson from the Office of Strategic Communication to create a video series that is going to show folks how to perform after client, end of day, and bi-weekly foot spa cleaning. And we're going to have it in Spanish, Vietnamese, and English.
And this is going to be on the website, you said?
It's already on the
Oh,
website.
okay.
But yeah, I'm going to hand it over to her to show you what it's like.
That's good.
Good afternoon.
Good
Good afternoon.
To provide good customer service and assist licensees, we reviewed some of our common violations and talked with field inspectors to see which violations would be best assisted with an instructional video. The inspectors identified foot spa cleaning procedures as the area in need of most assistance. TDLR partnered with the Aveda Institute, Austin, to video foot spa cleaning procedures. We obtained footage to use in a 3-part video series that demonstrates the required cleaning procedures for after client, end of day, and biweekly cleaning for Whirlpool foot spas. These videos will be available in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese. Multimedia technician Charisse Hobson filmed and edited the videos. Field inspector Jeanette DeVasti assisted with the filming and video layout. Field inspector Quy Tran assisted with Vietnamese translation and video layout. Compliance division Stuart Myrick completed the English voiceover, which you'll hear shortly. Field inspector Abraham Delgado completed the Spanish voiceover, and customer services Tu Van Hun completed the Vietnamese voiceover. We are pleased to present to you today the first video in this series, the after client cleaning procedures for Whirlpool foot spas, and as Tanya said, they are available on the Cosmetology homepage and also the Barbering homepage on the public website.
In this video tutorial, you will learn how to correctly clean a Whirlpool foot spa after each client and how to properly record your cleanings on a foot spa cleaning log. After each client, each Whirlpool foot spa needs to be cleaned and disinfected in the following manner. First, drain all the water and remove all the debris from the spa basin. Then, clean the spa basin with soap or detergent and water. You must disinfect the spa basin with an EPA-registered disinfectant with demonstrated bactericidal, fungicidal, and virucidal activity. Use the disinfectant according to the manufacturer's instructions. Finally, the spa basin must be wiped dry with a clean towel. Record the cleaning on a department-approved form with the date and time of each cleaning and disinfecting. Check the appropriate box for after-client cleaning. Complete the record at or near the time of cleaning and disinfecting. For more information, please visit our website at www.tdlr.texas.gov.
I like it. It's very good. It's good. Good job.
I have a question, Tanya. That sponge. Okay. I noticed that they used a sponge. Is that discarded after each cleansing, or is that something that's used on the next one?
This was a brand new sponge they used for the
But
the
is it
filming.
going to be a clean, brand new sponge each time?
Well, we don't necessarily require that it be. We require that they clean with soap and water. So, I mean, I would think after some time you would definitely want to discard it.
Well, I just know that sponges are, you know, they.
Yes.
So I
Yeah.
think you really need to really think through on that one a little bit more. That would be my recommendation.
Well, Mr. Chairman, you're aware that that's something that's under the purview of the advisory board, because the specific steps that were outlined are the specific steps that are in the rules today. So that's something that either we need to address or.
We need to change it in the rules.
I think we, yeah, whatever,
What
but I just think
you
this
know.
is something that I can see
It being a
being in the
problem.
school business,
Yeah.
how that could maybe not be sanitized or cleaned as properly as it should be.
And I think
Yeah.
we can take that out. It took us about 20 models to find the right foot. But I think we can do a quicker job on getting the right sponge in there or not.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
we could do some clarification in the
Okay.
rules or even possibly
I
have a
think maybe if you
recommendation.
kind of did that, that would probably justify that. But I just, no, my background is school. And,
Yeah, I became very aware of that when I looked over and everyone's very focused. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's all the same.
They were all in it.
well, I was
Awesome.
waiting for something to be said about that, to tell you the truth.
About the sponge,
About the
yeah.
sponge, but it.
There
And we can
really
add
isn't
that.
anything in our rules right now, and so we kind of hate to overreach, but it is something that we can work
I
on.
really think maybe this is something I would, what do y'all think?
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Yeah.
Or maybe you can just specify that you can use a sponge or a towel,
But
give
when
some
it's-
other things you can use instead of a sponge, so it could be
Yeah.
an option.
And when it's soiled, then you need to.
Yeah.
Disposable
it.
something, you know,
Mhm.
would be
Mhm.
acceptable.
Single-use item. Right.
Yes.
Now, inside your videos, would you have the remaining videos of what to do bi-weekly and so on, or you just
Those
have
are
this one?
coming next.
Okay.
They're actually being worked on. We've already
Okay.
got the footage, and the voiceovers are being put together right now, so yeah.
How are people knowing to go to the website to be able to find the videos?
Question. Well, we have a variety of ways. I'm hopeful that we're going to send out a list caster notice to the folks on our email list, an email, so that everyone could become aware of it. The other thing is that we envision the inspectors to be able to use these videos when they actually are out in the salons, potentially when they're writing this violation. And especially given that they're going to be in Vietnamese and Spanish, it may really help in case the inspector
Right.
doesn't happen to speak that other language.
But I think it's a great teaching tool.
I do
So
too.
think it's
Yes,
very
and
good.
I'm not sure if it already has, but Jennifer mentioned that it's going to be on our social media.
Any other questions? Okay. Are you completed?
That's
That's
it for us. Thank you
Okay,
guys very much.
thank you very much. This concludes our staff reports, I believe. Do you think we could take about a 10-minute break before you
We
get?
could, Mr. Chairman, do you want to do licensing after we come back?
No, Joyce is here, is?
Yes, she is.
Okay, let's have our licensing then.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Henry.
I don't like the open. I know.
Licensing statistics, right?
Okay. Hello, Joyce.
Hi, I was looking for you.
Uh-oh.
I was about to just not.
Good afternoon,
Good afternoon.
Chair Robinson.
How are you?
I had to get used to saying that. Good afternoon, Chair Robinson, Chairman Robinson, and the rest of the advisory board members, and I'd like to welcome the two new members. Welcome aboard. You guys have my statistical report, and as you can see, a large number of our license type, original license and renewals are issued online, but there's still a lot of license that we issue in-house. Earlier today, I gave kudos to the Hair Etc. team, which I'm a member of, but I have 6 people on that team. I'm not talking about myself, 6 people that process these license types, and they're doing an amazing job at getting these licenses issued in a timely manner. As you can see from the report, there have been an increase in population each year. I would like to give you guys a couple of other figures, and it's for the military provision. We've issued 80 licenses in 2016 with military provisions, and 60 of those were operator licenses. So far, 2017, we've issued 87 licenses with military provisions, and 66 of those were operator licenses. If you need a further breakdown, I can give it to you after the meeting of each license type.
I would like to have one.
I got it for you. Anyway, that concludes my report. Do you have any questions?
Any questions?
No.
I'm sorry, I almost forgot you.
That's okay, Ron.
Save the best for
I
last.
apologize.
I know you really never forget me.
I know. Now, this concludes, does it not?
Yes, sir, it
The
does.
staff report. I'd like for us to take about a 10-minute break, if that would be all right, before we get started on the other agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey.
Here, do it.
Okay, we're fine. All right, at this time, people, we're going to move on. We're going to move on. We are going to move on. Shall we? All right. At this point, we're going to go to the next area is the discussion of the 85th legislation session bills, and I believe Mr. Brian Francis.
Yes, sir.
Will you be the one who will be speaking to us about these Senate and House bills?
I will, Mr. Chairman. And I'm not going to go in detail because I touched on a number of these bills. But what I do want to share with you is just some tips and some insight and how you really need to jump into legislation. A lot of times when folks look at a bill, they'll look at the surface changes and they think that's it. But the key is when you're looking at statutory change, you have to look at the context of how it fits into the whole statute. You can't just look at the separate piece of legislation and say, okay, this is what it does, because the whole statute has to be read in harmony. So if there's one change in section 14, you need to read all 29 sections to make sure that there's not a provision, another provision that counters that. So I want to highlight just a few of the statutes that the work groups will be working on, because now, we're going to roll up our sleeves. And you guys are going to come back here in September. We're going to bring you back in November, probably bring you back in January, bring you back in April. We've got some work to do. We have some bills that we have to either turn into rules. We either have to delete some rules. We got to develop some clock hour standards moving forward. So there's a lot of things we have to jump on. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to go through House Bill 1502.
Okay.
So the first thing you're going to see in every bill is what we call the relating clause. That very first line that says, relating to the regulation of barbering and cosmetology.
Right, okay.
You can already tell from that title, that's a broad caption. And over in the legislative world, that means any and everything that deals with barbering and cosmetology could be changed under that caption. The staff worked really hard this session to make sure that the members who were kind enough to carry the bills for us and on our behalf, that they knew that this particular bill had a specific purpose for it. Please don't add any other amendments to it and that sort of thing. So the relating clause is the first thing you're going to look at. Section number 1, that is dealing with the barber statute. 1601 is barbering, 1602 is cosmetology, and 1603 are those provisions that impact both cosmetology and barbering. So when you look at our statutes and occupations code, 1601 is barbering, 1602 is cosmetology, 1603 impacts all those.
I see, okay.
Remember I touched briefly on the lawsuit that we're involved in dealing with threading?
Yes.
This is the provision in this statutory change here, which was signed into law. This pulls TDLR out of the threading licensing business. So it makes it very clear that if you are doing threading only, then you don't have to have a statewide license. And the language that we developed, and this was actually last session, we just carried it forward this session, the language we developed was based off of what California used when they pulled themselves out of licensing threading. That language under Section 1 says, by the way, no matter what that scope of practice says out there for the barbers, none of that says you have to have a license to do threading. But if somebody does threading and chooses to brush somebody's hair, color somebody's hair, they have to have a license. So this clearly pulls us out of the business in Section 1 for barbering. Section 2, with that 1602.002A, that is now saying, okay, how are we going to make that change in the cosmetology world? And we're doing the same thing over there for cosmetology. So Section 2, you go through it. If you'll turn to page 2, anytime you see underlined language, that is an addition to a statute. If you see strikeout, that means that language is being removed. And probably 3 months from now, when you see the bill or the statutory language, you're not going to see any of that. You're just going to see the text looking the same. So that's why it's important to really jump on the bill as it's filed and as it's signed and enrolled. At the very bottom on page 2, number 8, that was language that historically pulled TDLR into the threading world. And this language matches what California did. There are some things they do well there, and we were able to follow their lead on it. There's some things that they don't do well. We won't talk about that. So Section 8 has changes. that are included in the definition. There's no expansion of the scope of practice. It just really makes it very, very clear. People were not sure about the tweezing techniques and that sort of thing. This makes it very clear that if you're doing a depilatory, if you're doing those sort of things, it falls underneath it. Section 3, that language looks exactly like Section 1, doesn't it? When we made the changes for the barbering program and used that California standard to say we're no longer in the threading business, we just mimicked that language in the cosmetology statute to show that we want to be parallel in our approach to removing TDLR from that business. Section 4 in this particular bill, but it will always be the last section in any other bill. That's the transition language. So it's typically going to tell you, hey, TDLR, your commission must adopt rules by X date. That becomes our starting point. So if there's a bill, and you'll see it in another example, 2552, if it says we have to have rules adopted no later than January 1, 2018, then you start counting back from that. Okay, that means we're going to have a commission meeting early December. Then you count back from that. Okay, then we're going to have an advisory board early November. Then you have the 30-day comment period. Then we'll have another advisory board in September. So that starts the bookend of when we have to get things done. And everything kind of reads back that way. And we'll walk through that in just a second. This one's pretty clear. It's like Section 1, September 1, 2017, y'all ain't not in the threading business anymore. Very clear. If we never changed the rule, we still would not be in the business. The statute would guide. Even if we had 100 rules, and we won't, even if we had 100 rules that said threading, 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 the law says we can't do threading. So we may catch our rules up to that by saying, okay, we just need to repeal these when we get around to it. But when you see FAQs on September 1, it's going to say very clearly, hey, do I have to have a license to thread? No, you do not. Senate Bill 1502 says you're not required to have threading. Click on the link, go and send no more. So that's a quick read on 1502. Let's jump in 2738. Mr. Chairman, I just want to give you guys, like it says, some tips on how to jump into the statute because, again, it's more of an art than a science going through statutory provisions. And reading it out loud, reading it in conjunction with the whole law helps you make sense of the changes as opposed to the change in isolation. Your temptation is, let me read the bill and I know what it does. And I would just encourage you, read the bill in conjunction with the whole law. Now you understand how it fits in versus what that statutory provision does. In House Bill 2738, remember the world's most popular provision this session seemed to be clock to credit hour and credit to clock hour. This is one example, but all those bills use the same language. So if you look at Section 1, as I do my old man thing and take off the glasses, notwithstanding any other law, so that means if somebody had put a provision in, and in fact you have provisions in the barber and cosmetology statute that seem to say only clock hours. Well, this one right here says notwithstanding any other law, meaning no matter what we put over there before, starting today, this one governs. So even if you just read that statutory provisions in cosmetology and barbering, where it seems to say you got to have clock hours, this provision now governs, and this is where we have our new authority to develop the clock to credit formula. The commission may adopt rules. So the may is the operative word in there. We are going to adopt rules, but the commission could have taken a choice to not do anything and keep it status quo, and it's just clock hours. But this says that they may adopt rules, and we are going to move forward with that. So when you read statutory language, may has its power, shall has its power, and you have to read that in context of the whole law. So the commission may adopt rules to do X. So that tells us, even with this saying September 1, 2017, we have a time. We've got some time to build this thing up and do it right. I know there's a lot of conversations earlier about, make sure we're involved. We are the folks that deal with the modules, and we deal with the credit hours. We want you involved in it. So this is going to be an opportunity for us to kind of pace it out a little bit. We don't have to rush it. We don't have to rush this thing.
And this will go to 30 days? On my FAQs, this will go to 30 days? Okay.
You over there, what you mumbling? I thought you called me Ray for a second. Oh, such a great day today. Yeah, I mean, because I can't do that to Ray, all these lawsuits and stuff. But you guys. House Bill 2552. You would need a microscope and a little bit of help to figure out that this impacts your world. House Bill 2552, this is the one I was telling you about that deals with human trafficking. Well, notice that I am starting on section 13, 14, and 15, which means there's section 1 through 12 has nothing to do with TDLR. Well, that's not true. There's one section that has something to do with their massage programs that changes the Deceptive Trade Practice Act. But in terms of cosmetology, your work and your changes are only in 13, 14, and 15. And these changes, I think, are impactful. I'll just put my cards on the table. I'm very passionate about the issue of human trafficking. In another life, I do poetry, and a lot of my poetry every year centers around bringing awareness and attention to this very critical issue. So the commission shall require continuing education programs under this chapter to include, doesn't say how many hours, doesn't say the whole program has to be dedicated to it, doesn't say that you got to wear a t-shirt or a funny hat that talks about it. It says that we shall require them to include information. It could be a handout. It could be a discussion point. It could be so many different ways it could be accomplished on the activities commonly associated with it, the recognition of potential victims of human trafficking, and methods for assisting victims of human trafficking. Here's the deal. In this horrible world of human trafficking, particularly on the sex trade side of it, the women, they're a product. And while they may be abused and held against their will, that person that's holding them against the will is always going to make sure that product looks good. They're going to take them to get their nails done. They're going to take them to get their hair done. Mm-hmm. They're going to make sure that that product looks perfect. And that's why the proximity of having people who are trained that are dealing with customers every day and having that contact with them can see the bruise, can see that guy loitering in the background, and can say, I don't know, but something's wrong here. My antenna's up just a little bit. And they don't have to get any more involved than just dialing that 1-800 number. That's all they have to do. They don't have to say who they are. They just dial that number, and there is a task force in every county that's going to come and explore that. She's here every 3 weeks. He brings her in like clockwork. That's what this provision's for. It's just to help put extra eyes on it. They're doing this in other facilities to where dentist offices, because that's where they're going to take them to make sure their teeth are just right. So that's where the provision comes from. That's the background on it.
Brian.
Yes, ma'am.
Question. How are we regulating to make sure that it's getting done within the schools and the salons? I know we're going to have it posted, but how are we regulating that you make sure that we're doing it or communicating to our people?
You know, I think the first start from Representative Sinfronia Thompson was to start with the awareness. And I think tickling the mind of our licensees and saying, hey, just be a little bit more aware of this. We are never going to ask the school or licensee to say, well, how many people did you narc on today? You snitch today. But we are, when our folks go in that shop, they're going to look and make sure that the posting's up there. When Ray and his staff approves a continuing education course, they're going to now look and say, how are you providing that information? And that's the part of it. And I think the next step may be the next step, but this is that first step. And Representative Thompson did an amazing job of fighting to make sure that this had a place. When you look at Section 14, that's the posting requirements. In a licensed facility, this is in 1602. This is not in barbering. Because remember, 1601 deals with barbering, 1602 deals with cosmetology. So this is a licensed facility. And that means a business and it means a school. Have to have this posted in a conspicuous place. Shall put a sign up there. We'll probably have a sign that says, here's the one at a minimum you can use. But a school may say, man, I'm going further than that. I'm gonna have a little digital running man on there with people moonwalking and pop locking, to bring attention to it. So those can be accepted as well. So there'll be a minimum requirement, but also if schools and businesses want to go further, they can do that as well. Okay? When you look at section 24 and 25, jumping all around, but this is in one bill, and this is what my staff does. I mean, they're drilling down and trying to find every word search to make sure we're doing it right. 24 and 25, they relate to the, I'm sorry, I misspoke, Mr. Chairman. 23 and 24. 23 and 24 relate to the transition language for this specific bill. Notice we've got a couple of hurdles, all right? So the effective date, which is on a later page, is September 1, 2017. That says we can start working on it. We can get the work going on it. When you look at 23, not later than March 1, 2018, the commission shall adopt rules necessary to comply with 354. And 354 is going to be dealing with the continuing education piece. So we got to have rules in place no later than March 1, 2018. And then it says, you come back a little later and it says, okay, every course has to have it included by September 1, 2018 in letter B. Now we've got some timelines, but that distance between the rule and September 1 is allowing those courses to update their courses. They don't have to do it all at once. They don't have to do it in a hurry. But any course after September 1, 2018 needs to have that language. So that's why you see that little difference. The rule's way up here. Why is it so far from the enacting part of it? It's because we need to give those schools time to get that incorporated. September 24th, Section 24 says January 1, 2018, the commission shall adopt rules necessary for that sign that we're going to put in there. So now we got this like, oh my God, we got rules we got to do for CE by March, and January we got to do the sign stuff. Oh my God, this is crazy. And then they got to have it in there by February 1. Well, we're going to start working on that ASAP. And those are the easy ones. The signage is the easy one. We can get that up and running. Our staff, Ray's great group, Tanya's great group, they're going to be out there helping folks with it. Hey, make sure you get your sign up. It needs to be here. We're not looking at it from a punitive standpoint. Some of you have been around long enough to know that when there's a new statutory change, we have a grace period where we want to make sure people can come into compliance, particularly with this one. This is an awareness issue. This is not, you've done something to a customer that you didn't do the sanitation issues. This is an awareness issue. So we're going to make sure that we move slow and deliberate as we move forward with this. Mr. Chairman, those are 3 examples of statutory changes that are going to come before the advisory board, and then of course the industry is going to have an opportunity to look at when we do public comment and any rule changes. These elements will drive the work we're doing. Ray's group, man, they got a lot of stuff to do this session. So imagine you've got the human trafficking piece that needs to be in by September 1 for the cosmetology program. Then they're also going to be working on a driver education program for the hard of hearing and deaf that has to be in place by September 1. And then they're also going to be working on the police interaction program. So there's been entirely too much killing of people of color and police interaction, and a lot of it is miscommunication. We're going to be right at the forefront in driver education programs and including in the curriculum for those students information about how to engage in those interactions. That's all going to be on Ray's group, in addition to, oh, they changed the square footage for schools, in addition to, I'm moving to a smaller space. So basically, y'all can have a lot of stuff to beat Ray up over. So we'll have a lot of fun meetings coming up in the future, and we want to take full advantage of that. But I've told Ray and his staff that they are going to be at the apex, the forefront of TDLR's reputation of getting things done and getting it done well, going into the next session. So I look forward to seeing how well they shine, because I know they will. Mr. Chairman, the bill implementation process that you can see in the short term, September 11th is when we'll be looking at your next advisory board meeting, which means between now and then, the work groups are going to be working hard. Someone spoke earlier during the public comment period and said, y'all call us if y'all need something, and we'll tell you how to write the modules. Well, you're being called right now. Don't wait. Don't wait for us to write you a letter. If you have an idea of how we can do the clock to credit modules, send it. What's my email address? Education.tdlr. Education@TDLR. We're starting over. .texas.gov. So if you have ideas specifically on how we can master and do the clock to credit hour module stuff correctly, education@TDLR, .texas.gov. And it'll be on the table that we have little papers and stuff for you. So, Mr. Chairman, September 11th, we need to have a meeting.
Yes.
That's fine.
Yes.
November 13th would be the bookend meeting as we go through rules. And then our commission will probably take it up on December 4th of 2017.
So are we looking at 3 different meetings?
2 meetings for the advisory board.
Uh-huh.
The third one is the decision meeting of our commission. And then we'll do some meetings going into January.
Okay.
But that's the first stack of things we need to get done and get off our plate. That will involve the advisory board. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll just wrap up with this. Reading statutory language, you always hear in the news where somebody just says, just out of the blue, well, you know, the law says da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. That means that somebody told them what the law said because they haven't read it. They haven't read it. They're just usually repeating what somebody told them the law says. And when you have statutory changes, you need to read it for yourself. You need to read it for yourself. You need to read it in the context of the whole statute. And that's when you're going to have the best information in putting rules together. And, Mr. Chairman, that's all I have on this.
Okay. Does anyone have any comments or questions for our executive?
One of the things that, stylists talk a lot, and there was some, the human trafficking is a great idea, but there was also some discussion that there'd be some of the same type of ideas for domestic abuse as well. And so, I know our stylists are always looking for continuing education. Because this isn't so much it's a public service announcement is what it is, and to have some sort of free CEUs through TDLR for continuing education for our stylists. They're always needing that when they're renewing their licenses, and might help them along the way.
And that's a great point. During the session, Representative Hernandez filed a bill that would allow for, would require information about domestic abuse in the curriculum as well as in continuing education and for license renewal. That bill didn't make it all the way through, but there was definitely some talk about the nexus of those 2 issues, human trafficking and domestic abuse, and the proximity that cosmetologists have to those victims of that. So I would not be surprised if that gets some more momentum. In one of the cases, the language would have had TDLR as a provider of sort for those courses. So you're psychic, my friend. You're psychic. Everybody get the lottery ticket that he gives the numbers out to today.
Okay. Any other comments or questions or anything? Okay.
Good.
Okay,
Do we have a time on those meetings yet?
The actual time of the day?
Yeah, like, are we gonna do it in the morning or the afternoon?
On the 11th, we have the afternoon.
Okay.
We have a choice in November if we want to set that meeting.
So we have morning or afternoon?
On the?
On the November 13th meeting?
November 13th, you can have morning or afternoon. You can have
Morning or afternoon, okay. Okay, so let me run, do I make this decision or can I comply? Okay, what, on the 13th? what
So,
was
Mr. Chairman,
that?
just
Would you
text
rather
on
have a
Monday,
morning?
November
Would you like to have a Monday or an?
Mr. Chairman, if we could technically just say that we are going to agenda item J that deals with the date of the meetings and the time so that we'll have everything in order. I don't want Colleen to beat me up. She's
Okay.
really violent.
So at this time, we're going to deal with J on the agenda.
Okay. Thank you,
Okay.
sir.
All right. And that has to do with the, for us to have
Time and date.
the dates for our next meeting. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And we've agreed that the afternoon of September 11th will be the next TDLR Advisory Committee meeting, and it will be at 1 o'clock in the afternoon at this facility. Is that correct? Okay. And then on November the 13th, would y'all prefer Monday? What is is afternoon better or mornings? Pardon me? Afternoon. Is afternoon all right with everyone? Afternoon would be great for everyone. I know it would be for me.
Mr. Chairman, is it possible to have the start time at 1:30? I did not give my staff the opportunity to eat lunch in between the two
They
meetings
didn't go
today.
to Papa Do's before we came?
They did not, they did not.
You're sliding,
I-
Brian. You
I
got
feel
it.
bad, I feel bad.
Okay.
So 1:30?
1:30,
1:30, is that
okay.
work?
So let's go over this one more time, if you don't mind.
Yes, for both.
September the 11th will be our next meeting, and it'll be at 1:30 in the afternoon. And it'll be here at this facility.
Yes, sir.
And then November the 13th, we're going to have that at 1:30 in the afternoon, same place,
Thank
same
you.
facility. All right? So we've taken care of item number J on our agenda, is correct?
Sir?
All right, now, I think the next thing that we have before us, we have number H, and I believe this is dealing with our, we're going to have our work groups, okay? So you have before you, I believe, a form that you need to turn into me regarding what committees that you would like to serve on. Tamla, I need to ask you this, for those people who are not present, do I just go on and assign them
Yes,
to an
sir.
area? Would that be, okay. So, for the administrative rules, okay. Okay. We have, Mary, oh, I'm sorry. I wish you'd be on time.
I'm so sorry. I wrote slow.
Holding up the show here. I can't remember to read this signature. Okay, looks like, well, I'm looking at that y'all all want the same thing. Okay, for the, let's take care of the administrative rule group. Let's see here, Keisha, do you want to be on that group? Is that?
I put that as number 2 on one of the education.
Okay. Okay, number 1, okay. So. Okay. So this is gonna get, okay, let's put, so Alicia, you want to be on the administrative, right?
Mhm.
Okay. All right, we'll put Alicia Riviera on the administrative. We'll put Mary Pascal on the administrative, and I would like to serve on the administrative, okay? So that takes care of the administrative. We're only going to put 3 members on each committee, if that's in agreement with everyone, okay? All right, now for the education committee, we have Mary Pascal, and we also have Mary Pascal Lindsay, excuse me, I'm sorry. Alicia Riviera, and we also have Keisha Sorrell. Lakeisha, okay?
Lakeitha.
No, it's not either, it's
Put Keitha on the sheet.
Keitha, you put Keitha,
Yes,
okay.
sir.
So what do you want us to put?
Keitha.
Keitha, okay.
Well, Lakeitha is official.
Okay, Lakeitha is
Yes, sir.
official, I think we better go with that,
Okay.
okay? So we'll put the Lakeitha Sorrell, Mary Lindsay, and Miss Riviera, Alicia Riviera on the education, okay? All right, now then, the enforcement group. Okay. Tony, would you like to be on the enforcement group? Is that correct? We'll put Tony Anderson. Let's see. Y'all have 2, right, okay. So, you want to be on, you want to be also want to serve on this one too?
He said pick 3.
No, that's what I'm doing.
Okay.
Tony is going to be the number 1.
Okay.
Okay. Then you would be, Alicia will be number 2.
Okay.
Okay. And,
And then you got the list where the people
okay,
that are
I
on
know,
here. Okay.
dear, but just,
Okay.
I'm trying to take care of the ones that I have here.
Okay, okay.
All right, so I have those, and then I need one more person to serve on that. And let's see, who is not here? Okay. We'll put Natalie on that one. Natalie Enderman, is that all right?
Okay. Yes, sir.
All right, so I've got 3 on that. Where do I need to go now? Turn the page is a good way to go. Okay, we need to go to the Health and Safety Work Group. Okay, anybody here want to serve on that? None on that.
That was my third choice.
Okay. All right, Mary Pascal wants to be there. Okay.
You have three.
You have, I do have three?
Well, no, that was
Okay.
my third one.
Okay, that's your third one. So Mary wants to serve on Health and Safety. And
You may
I
want to
was-
have Maricela on one of those as a
I think we need to put Maricela, let's put her on Health and Safety. And have we put Vanessa on anything? Okay, let's put her on Health and Safety too. So I have three there, do I not?
That's correct.
Okay, all right. So we have Health and Safety. All right, now on the licensing group, let's see.
Claudia.
We need to put Claudia Avalos, okay, on the health licensing. And did you put yours on there too? Okay, Lakeitha wants to be on that one also. She wants to be on licensing. And Lakeitha Sorrell on licensing. And I need one more. Who is over here?
Have you put Diane Salazar on?
Diana Salazar.
We'll put Salazar on licensing, okay? Did I cover everybody on the list here? Is everybody on a group? Okay. So,
Mr. Chairman?
yes,
Can I make one recommendation?
sure.
Give some thought to either adding Salazar, and I know you were going with three on each committee, but either adding Salazar or yourself to the health and safety one. We may have some
Let's put, Miss, I will go on the health and
Thank you.
safety if
Appreciate
that's
that.
all right.
Absolutely.
And I really and truly kind of wanted to put Diane also on the education. Could we do that?
You have the power. I
Okay,
mean,
okay.
you're like a
I really would like,
superhero.
I would like to have Diane
Appointment.
with TEA. I really think she would
Absolutely.
be an asset to that committee. Okay, so now can you give us a printout on this? Okay, so we have all of our bases covered at this time, is that correct? All right, thank the Lord.
Mr. Chairman, I have to do my speech now. So when you are working between now and the next 18 months, and you're working on work group A, but you're also on work group B, you cannot carry the conversations from work group A into B.
I see.
That gets you into that walking quorum that Colleen was referring to. And the temptation is, well, you know, in that other meeting, we said,
Yeah.
erase it. Erase it from your thoughts. So just be mindful that the way the committees are set up is a great thing, but do not be the one who walks a quorum by bringing the conversations from a preceding work group, okay? Because you're still gonna be able to talk about them when we get back to the advisory board group and saying, oh, you know, here's what I really want to say we need to do. But just in those meetings, you have to be very mindful and strict on that, okay? Thank you.
All right, any other comments? Okay, do what?
We're good.
Okay. So, am I understanding we will have a printout on these committees? Okay, all right, thank you very much.
So she's gonna email it to us.
Do what?
She's gonna email it to us.
Oh, great, that's excellent. Okay, now the next thing we need to discuss, recommendation for agenda items for the next advisory board, the next meeting, which will be in September. Anybody want to put anything on the, I know I have one item I would like to personally put on the board. I think we need to have a co-chair in the event that I cannot be here or I'm not here. So, so I guess do we need to do another type, does anyone volunteer, or how would you suggest? would
Mr.
be
Chairman,
the
we'll
best
do
way
one
to-
or two ways. One, we'll research and see if we have the authority to appoint a co-chair. We have other boards that specifically authorize us the ability to do that.
Mhm.
But we've ran into the situation to where the chair was unable to be at the meeting.
Mhm.
And we just simply said, this person's going to sit in that spot.
And
So
then is
it
that-
wasn't,
okay.
it wasn't a matter of having a vote.
We don't need to do that?
I
Is
don't
that
believe
fine?
we do.
Okay, if we don't need to do that, then that's fine.
Okay.
Okay. But when I was stuck out in that traffic on I-35, believe you me, I'm thinking, sure would be nice to know that
To know
somebody
somebody's gonna
was
do
going to
it.
start this, so until I got there. So if you say that we don't, and that you are telling me that it will be covered, then I'm comfortable
We'll make it
with
happen.
that.
We'll make sure that.
Okay. All right. Do we have any other items that we want to put on for our agenda? Now that we have a committee?
We have plenty from our end.
Mhm.
We'll have the rules that'll be necessary to go for public comment, so that'll be we'll also have the reports from the work groups. So whether it's enforcement, administrative, health and safety, they'll be providing their reports, which will probably look like in the form of rules. Ray's group will be providing discussions on the conversations we've had regarding getting feedback for the modules, the presentations that we're going to do at the TIVA conference, which I think will fold into our work products as well. So we've got quite a bit.
Okay.
Yes, I have a question. I mean, what about the teaching plan? Are we can we put that on the agenda to talk about it? And
Absolutely.
Okay, we need.
Until we unteached on that, we'll keep that as part of Ray's report to bring updates and bring you guys up to speed on that.
So are
Absolutely.
you making a motion?
I'm making a motion
Okay.
that we put that on the agenda.
Okay. Do I have a second of that motion, please? Okay.
Second
So
that motion.
the motion has been made by Board Member Alicia Riviera and Mary Pascal Lindsay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
remember, we can't vote because we don't have a quorum.
Oh, that's,
But we can listen, and we're good.
okay.
Oh,
We
yeah.
got it.
We don't
good.
have a quorum. So at this point, and
We're good.
we're just good, right? So,
I've been married twice. I can take some hints of what needs to be on there.
okay. So at this point, we can conclude our business here? Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, then this meeting is adjourned.